Hi there, I'm Martin. With me today is Gary Johnson, who brings 40 plus years of sales leadership and now AI sales enabled insight. This is the second of our podcasts, and today we will discuss how my world of commercials modeling and business case narratives aligns and supports the sales executives. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Martin. It's great to be here again. Good to see you.
I'm keen to get your insights and alignment on some of this stuff. So let's start with the business case. In your experience, how much does a formal business case influence whether a deal gets done versus simply justifying a decision that's already been made?
A lot of the time, it just justifies the existing decision that the customer has made. And I think the reason for that is I've seen a lot of sales teams who make the mistake of trying to introduce the business case, introduce the value proposition at the end of a sale. And that's the big mistake. If a value proposition, if a business case is brought in at the beginning of a conversation with a customer, even when you're doing discovery, you stand a much better chance of helping the customer uncover some things they hadn't thought about. But you'll also stand a much better chance of influencing the customer's outcomes and decision making, not in a negative way, not in a manipulative way, but in a way that helps them realize better value. So I think that's the real difference. It's bringing that conversation very early on in the engagement.
Gary, you're speaking my language here. I'm always trying to get the salespeople to kind of bring in that narrative early. These days, I tend to think less in terms of business case and more in terms of a value narrative, using the customer's own metrics to create urgency or act. How important is that in the overall deal, and does its importance change as the deal size increases?
As the deal size increases, things certainly get more complicated. There's more politics involved. There are certainly more stakeholders that you need to engage with, differing points of view that want a good outcome together, but maybe have different paths to get that outcome. Bringing that value conversation, that business case conversation in early and centering it on the customer's metrics. What is it that's going to help the customer see real value is the key point. My career years ago, we were often taught to go into a sales engagement and to engineer metrics for the customer that were good for us. That doesn't work anymore. Customers are too smart. They've had too much experience with vendors that tried that and it failed. And they're a lot more clued up on what it means for their organization and how they get to be successful. So it's really more about aligning your value proposition, your opportunity to help them achieve an outcome to their business metrics that's important.
I like the focus on their business metrics, not your business metrics.
Often they're different metrics for different stakeholders.
Yes,
don't forget that.
yes.
It's not one set of metrics.
So understand who in the organization, the stakeholder that you're trying to address. In large enterprise deals, I've often built 2 or 3 commercial models to give customers a genuine choice. From your perspective, when should those options be introduced? Early to shape thinking, or later once procurement dynamics are clearer?
Choice is a good thing. It is good to give customers options. They want options. Too much choice is not a good thing. Sometimes you can confuse a customer. I was working in an organization many years ago. I think we had 10 different value statements or 10 different value propositions that we were trying to present to a customer, and they didn't know what to do, right? So it didn't help at all. I think you really got to go back to what I said before, zero in on the customer's metrics, maybe help them uncover some that they don't understand, and maybe 1 or 2 options. But probably not A or B. It's probably, well, here's the outcome you're working towards. Here's how we can help you realize that value. There's a couple of paths on this that we could decide to take depending on what you're really trying to achieve. So options in that sense, great.
You've got the core piece that you're aiming for, and then there's some things around the edges that might add value or get a better deal.
Or that get uncovered through the process that no one understood. But again, if you're that trusted partner that's involved in the conversation from the beginning, helping them uncover value, not trying to manipulate them to an outcome, then they're going to be more ready to accept.
I like the idea, uncover value, help them uncover value.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you walk us through what a healthy negotiation phase looks like, and specifically what support an AE should be getting from the various internal processes, people like me, deal desk pricing, whatever?
It's important, if we're talking about complex sales, particularly an enterprise type of sale, and today I see people confuse enterprise selling. When I talk about enterprise selling, it's a complex sale in a large organization over a multi-period of time. It's probably not one transaction, it's multiple transactions. Some people are in big organizations that sell to enterprises, but they're very transactional. That's not an enterprise sale. The situation for the sales team, because selling is a team sport, is they really got to understand the roles that everybody on the team plays throughout the entire engagement. Because you start your negotiation in the very first conversation. You start your negotiation the very first time you engage with the customer, even before pricing or commercials are discussed. The tone, the way you hold yourself, the way you present value and help them uncover value is really where the negotiation is centered around. So then it becomes a question of when's the best time to have somebody like you, Martin, involved in the conversation, early in the conversation to help them understand the value. Doesn't mean you don't come back towards the end as well to help them remember or realize, well, that was the value we were talking about and this is how we're going to achieve what we agreed you wanted to achieve. But it's understanding as a salesperson, you're an orchestrator. You're there to orchestrate all the players in the team, internal people on your own organization, as well as people in the customer-facing team, and make sure they're plugged into the right people in the customer's organization where they can show and add value at every stage of the step. Negotiation then just becomes a discussion around, are we achieving the value that we expected to? Is there potential for more? And it's not a price haggle, it's more about an opportunity to confirm that we're actually achieving value. You can also get situations where the negotiations are not about price. It could be payment terms might be the key differentiator. We once closed the deal. I was working with a customer in Asia. The reason we closed the deal was not price. I think we're about 10 or 15% more expensive than the competitor, but we agreed to lock down the price in local currency, which nobody else would do. So that meant they didn't have to worry about the dollar shifting all of the time over time to the price. You've got to be creative as well.
I like your point there, Gary, about the negotiation could often start with that first meeting. And some of the good sellers I've been with have said, we've started negotiations and it's the very first meeting.
The way you hold yourself, the way you present yourself, the way they perceive you is going to determine how they come to the commercial conversation and what they're going to care about or what they think they can push you on.
So it's going in with that mindset up front that we're starting the conversation now and the negotiation starts now.
It's no different to life. You're negotiating every time you meet somebody, you're negotiating a friendship, you're negotiating an outcome in a retail store, and it's how you carry yourself. It's the way you first approach people, is how they react.
Where do you most often see tension created internally within the seller during a deal, and why does that tension usually surface at exactly the wrong time?
If there is tension, it's going to surface at the wrong time. That's the point. The two key areas you tend to see it is around internal price approvals. It depends on the organization, but a lot of big enterprise organizations tend to have very strict approval processes. Now, there's a reason for that. The reason is often around the idea that we have a big organization with thousands of sellers. We need standardized processes. We can't have a sales team creating a deal that is completely outside of what it is we're able to deliver on. So that internal tension can sometimes happen. And again, I think the mistake the teams make there is they don't raise the issues early enough. They don't preempt the conversation internally well before they actually need to go get the approval. That's one. The other one is really probably around quarterly close. There's still big organizations, public organizations. There's a lot of pressure from the street to deliver numbers. There's a lot of pressure to show growth. That's still the case today. So that concept that when the organization is maybe getting to a point where they're struggling a little bit on their quarterly numbers, they put pressure on the sales teams to deliver over and above what they were expected to or what they thought they could or what they were ready to do. So I've certainly seen deals pulled forward by a quarter or two when they didn't really need to be, or maybe when the customer wasn't ready. Maybe it helped them make their numbers, but it meant that they did something bad in the deal for themselves or for the customer. Sometimes you just got to do it. Let me be clear, right? A public company has got to make its numbers, so sometimes you're forced to do it. But those are the challenges.
As buying behavior changes, how do you see the sales cycle itself evolving? And what does that mean for the role and timing of supporting deal functions around the seller?
There's been a lot of talk in the last few years around product-led growth as a sales motion, right? The idea that customers can self-select a product online, can self-activate, can basically get themselves up and running. I think AI is going to automate that and accelerate that a lot more. So I think we'll see a lot of technology at the, I don't want to say bottom end of the market, but the transactional end of the market. I think we'll see more of that technology up in the top end of the market when we get into complex enterprise deals as well. But I think what we'll see is internal pricing approvals, internal legal approvals. I think we'll see technology being able to surface the exceptions to the standard process quickly so that a human can make a decision about whether to accept it or not. But a lot of that lower level process will be handled automatically and free up people.
You've said something I strongly agree with, that pricing is no longer just a finance exercise. It's a go-to-market capability. What do you mean by that in practice?
First of all, customers are much more able to understand what your pricing is all about. So the days of really complex and obtuse pricing policies and structures are gone because they can compare you to a competitor that prices differently, but understand where the real value opportunity is, where maybe you're overpriced or maybe where there's an opportunity for some extra value. That's the first thing. So they understand a lot more about it. So you really got to start thinking about pricing in terms of how you're positioning your product when you go to market in the first place. It's not about the price the customer's going to pay. It's how we position ourselves as a solution, as an opportunity for value add to the customer that helps then put us at a premium position, put us in a position where value is being created and therefore we're worth paying a little bit more money.
Another line of yours that stood out to me is AI exposes weak pricing models. Is that because buyers are using AI to assess more critically, or because sellers are over-relying on AI to construct something for them?
It's the former. I think customers are much smarter. They've always been smart, but have much more technology at their disposal now that helps them uncover weaknesses in a pricing structure. It's very rare that you're a single vendor with an offering that no one else can offer or some alternative to. So there are multiple companies out there that the customer could probably realize what they're trying to get done with those products rather than yours. If they're priced more simply, if they're priced in a way that the customer can achieve value and not get locked into overpricing, then they're going to make those choices. So you need to be ready to be able to operate at that level.
Gary, I love your pushback on over-engineered ROI claims. I've seen the same thing, especially with automated value tools. When you say buyers want believable and explainable economics, not more numbers, what does that change for the sellers day to day?
Customers are much smarter. They have much more technology at their disposal now to actually understand what's going on in pricing structures. It's very rare these days that you as an organization have something completely unique that is the only thing that can solve the customer's problem. There are typically lots of other companies out there, maybe with slightly different solutions, but they can still get the customer's outcome just as well as you can. If their pricing structures and if the way they go to market are simpler and more transparent, then customers are going to feel more confident they're not being ripped off. They're not being put into a situation which is not at their best advantage later on down the track. You see that sort of thing happening all the time. I once sat in front of a CFO. We had 10 different value propositions that we were trying to offer him. And his response to me was, wow, they're all very complex. They're all very great. But what do you really mean? What is it you can really do for us? Just get down to the nitty gritty of it.
I think we've talked before about giving over unrealistic numbers to customers. And I feel that's where we can get a little bit too carried away with some of the ROI claims. I feel that we need to ground it in their metrics and keep it very simple as well.
I think that's it, Martin. I think absolutely. We talked about it earlier. It's going back and understanding what the customer's value goals are, what it is that they're trying to achieve, and the metrics that are important to them. If you can ground the ROI around that's what's important. The other piece of it is it's not all about price, even though we talk about pricing and complex pricing. It's about commercial. We once closed a deal where we committed to signing the deal for the customer in the local currency, which no one else would do. The price became secondary because at least they knew that they were locked into a particular set of dollars as opposed to multi-currency pricing that would vary throughout the contract.
You've said sellers need to become commercially literate again. So to be honest, does that mean people like me are out of a job, or does it mean I shift my role to educating and enabling the sellers to think more commercially?
Well, I think your role is more important and more in demand as a result of all of this, not less. I don't think there's chances of that kind of role going away. There's a difference between having a salesperson who's commercially aware and astute and the expert that really understands how to zero in on the big value stuff and understand from the customer's perspective what is going to really make it work or not work, and really have a conversation at an intellectual level that allows the customer to share that information as well. So look, I definitely think there needs to be more education to sellers, and people like yourself need to be involved in that role to help them understand it. I think there's no downside to the whole of the sales organization becoming more commercially astute, particularly as AI becomes involved and starts to automate processes. But also, we talked about it once before, the idea that sellers probably become more domain experts than they are process gurus. So having them understand a little bit more about the way the business operates is important.
Instead of just understanding the sales process itself.
Yeah, it used to be sales in an enterprise organization was really about managing the paperwork through a process more than anything else. Yeah, you engaged with the customer and did stuff, but that was the role of the salesman or the enterprise sales guy. It needs to become much more about how you orchestrate a team to uncover value for the customer in metrics that make sense for them.
And that was my key question, Gary. I'm pleased my role is safe here. I'll continue to do what I've been doing. Look, it's fantastic getting your perspective on how this value selling, commercial modeling really lines up with the account teams and the sellers. So thanks very much.
My pleasure, man. It's been a great conversation as always. I enjoyed talking to you.
Cheers.